Okay, so are you ready to dive into this? You've brought in this incredible text, Odo's Sermon on St. Lucian.
Mhm.
And, it's more than just a sermon. It's a total time capsule. We're talking Roman Empire, early Christianity, the whole shebang.
It's amazing, isn't it? This blend of history, politics, you've got religious fervor. It's really captivating how it just pulls you right into the thick of things. You really get a sense of what those early Christians were up against, especially trying to spread the word in a place like Roman Gaul.
And it wasn't exactly a walk in the park, right?
Yeah.
The Bellovaci people, for example, the sermon mentions them, known for being pretty fierce, wouldn't you say? They resisted Roman rule. And get this, over 60,000 warriors strong. Can you imagine?
Wow.
That's some serious pushback.
Yeah.
Talk about a tough crowd. It took guts to walk into that kind of environment with a message that, let's be honest, challenged the whole Roman power structure.
Absolutely. I mean, talk about a leap of faith, right? These early Christians, they were like warriors in their own right. Instead of swords, though, they were armed with faith, going out there to spread their message in the face of some pretty intense opposition. The sermon really drives that point home.
Yeah. And no one embodies that warrior spirit quite like St. Lucian himself. What a story. The guy didn't even start out as Lucian, did he? Nope, he was Lucius. Pretty Roman, right?
Right.
Especially since he came from a long line of Roman nobility.
And that name change from Lucius to Lucian is really significant. It's like a total transformation, a spiritual awakening. Lucian actually means light bringer,
Whoa,
which
whoa.
takes on this whole other meaning when you think about his vision, right? Bringing the light of Christianity to the world.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
Going from Roman royalty to, well, basically a life of radical faith, challenging the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. And here's the thing, he wasn't just some guy who, stumbled upon a new religion. Oh no, this sermon makes it crystal clear that he was the disciple of Peter. Peter himself,
It's true.
ordained as a bishop by Clement, who took over for Peter, by the way, and then sent on this mission to Gaul by Dionysius. Talk about some serious street cred. What do you think that was like for him, though, having that direct connection back to those early days of the church?
Those are some A-plus apostolic credentials
Uh-huh.
right there. It's like Odo's going above and beyond to establish Lucian's authority,
Oh, yeah.
putting him right there in the lineage of those closest to Jesus.
Which makes the whole mission even more, would you say, compelling?
Definitely compelling. And let's not forget, infinitely more dangerous. We're talking about a time when the Roman Empire saw Christianity as, well, a threat, a direct threat to their power, their authority, everything.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Even with that threat hanging over him, he still traveled all over the place spreading the word. Didn't he even get imprisoned near Parma at one point? The sermon mentions it. It sounds like he was basically preaching nonstop, wherever he went, even if it meant putting himself in danger.
And he had a network, which is really interesting. The text talks about how some local Christians helped him escape from that prison, a miraculous escape, they called it. It shows you the lengths these early Christian communities were willing to go to support each other, even with the constant threat of Roman persecution. It's pretty incredible.
It's like they had a whole underground network. I mean, I had no idea they were so organized, even back then.
Yeah.
The sermon mentions that when they got to RLs, they actually sat down and divvied up the work, strategically. They were sending missionaries to different regions, Spain, Toulouse. It was a full-blown operation.
It really makes you think, right? This wasn't just some random haphazard thing. This was a movement. They had a plan to establish Christianity in new territories, and they were serious about it.
And Lucian, he ends up in Beauvais, right?
Yeah.
That's where things really get interesting. The sermon goes into overdrive, describing him as this incredible preacher. And he wasn't all talk either. The guy lived what he preached. I'm talking simple life, constant prayer, intense self-discipline. It's all there in the text. Odo even draws these parallels between Lucian and the apostles, really driving home how dedicated he was to spreading the faith.
And people responded to that combination of powerful preaching and a life that really embodied those Christian ideals. It resonated with people. The sermon emphasizes this too, talking about how he could heal the sick, cast out demons. We're talking about miracles. Imagine what that must have been like back then in a world without all our modern medicine. To see someone do those things, it would have been incredible.
I mean, talk about a recipe for success.
Uh-huh.
No wonder people were flocking to hear him. But you know what they say? All good things, or I guess in this case, all successful ministries, they tend to attract attention. And not always the good kind, right?
Mm.
Especially not with the Roman authorities cracking down on Christianity.
Exactly. And that's where things take a bit of a dark turn. Enter Emperor Domitian, notorious for his persecution of Christians. The sermon really captures that sense of danger, the very real threat faced by anyone who dared to challenge the emperor's decrees.
And you know what's crazy? People like Pescennius, Sicinius, Latinus, Jarius, and Antor, the Roman officials sent after Lucian, those were real people. Their names are right there in the sermon, black and white. It's a good reminder that this isn't just some story. This is history. Real people, real lives, real danger.
Absolutely. And the sermon doesn't shy away from that. It shows just how high the stakes were for those early Christians. This was a time when refusing to renounce your faith could cost you everything.
And yet, even with those guys breathing down his neck, Lucian refused to back down.
It's true. He was fearless.
It really shows you the strength of his character. The sermon makes that crystal clear.
He was truly committed to his
He
beliefs.
could have easily caved under that pressure, but he didn't.
Not at all. He stood firm. And that's what makes his story so powerful. It's this incredible testament to the power of faith, the courage it takes to stand up for what you believe in, especially when it's dangerous.
Totally. It makes you appreciate how easy we have it today. I mean, we can walk down the street and find a church on pretty much every corner.
Yeah.
Back then. Declaring yourself a Christian, that was a life or death decision. It really makes you think, what happened? Have we lost something along the way?
It's a question worth asking for sure, because at its heart, that's what Odo's sermon is really all about. It's more than just some historical account. It's a reflection on faith, on courage, on the sheer power of belief when you're up against it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about faith without talking about power, right?
Yep.
Even today, you see it all the time. Anyone in a position of authority, they see a challenge, especially a challenge rooted in faith, and they immediately feel threatened.
It's this timeless struggle. And Lucian's story, it captures that perfectly. The Roman Empire might be long gone, but the themes, they still resonate today.
No doubt about it. It makes you wonder, though, would Lucian's message have had the same impact without the backdrop of Roman persecution? Did his martyrdom actually help spread Christianity in Gaul, or did it make things harder? It's a tough one.
It really is. And that's what makes this sermon so thought-provoking. Odo doesn't give us easy answers. He lays it all out there, the cost of faith, the choices we make, the legacy we leave behind, and he forces us to wrestle with those questions.
And he does it all through these incredible descriptions, these vivid scenes. You can practically see them unfolding right in front of you. Like, take Lucian's execution, for example. Odo doesn't hold back. He describes it in detail, but then he shifts gears. He brings in this heavenly light, this voice from above, proclaiming Lucian's reward. It's powerful stuff. He's clearly trying to inspire his audience, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. He's not just recounting events. He's trying to create an experience. He wants his listeners to feel the weight of those choices, the depth of Lucian's conviction.
And he's really good at it. You know what else I find interesting? He never actually comes right out and calls the Romans evil,
That's true.
even though they're, persecuting Christians and all that. He seems more focused on this idea of faith in the face of opposition, Why do you think that is?
It's an interesting choice, right? It's almost as if he's making a deliberate decision to highlight the power of faith, even in the darkest of times. The Roman authorities, they're a force to be reckoned with, for sure.
Yeah.
But in a way, they're almost secondary to the main story, which is the unwavering faith of Lucian and those like him.
It's true. It really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the role of martyrdom in the early church. These weren't people actively seeking out death. It wasn't some kind of suicide cult. It became this defining characteristic of their faith. And maybe that's part of what drew people to Christianity, don't you think? This idea that they were willing to die for what they believed in.
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely possible. You have to remember, the way we understand martyrdom today, it's very different. For those early Christians, it wasn't just about dying for your beliefs. It was about achieving this ultimate victory, the ultimate act of faithfulness, the ultimate demonstration of love for Christ.
It's intense when you think about it. That level of commitment is almost unfathomable today.
It is. And yet, when you read accounts like Odo's sermon, you can't help but be moved by their conviction. These were people who truly believed.
Absolutely. Which I think leads to the most important question. What does all this mean for us today? We might not be facing persecution like Lucian did, but we still face choices. We still have to decide what we stand for, what we're willing to sacrifice. What do you think is the biggest takeaway?
I think it all comes down to this. Odo's sermon on St. Lucian, it's more than just a historical document. It's an invitation to examine our own lives, our own beliefs, our own courage.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of those bigger questions,
Yeah.
So seriously, thank you for bringing this to light because I think this is a conversation we all need to be having.
My pleasure.
But where were we? Yes. Lucian's execution, the aftermath, his story spreading like wildfire.
It's amazing, isn't it, how his death almost becomes this catalyst, like his martyrdom breathed new life into his message.
So true. And it's not like they had Twitter or anything back then.
Right.
No social media to spread the word.
It really speaks to the power of a good story, doesn't it? Especially a story about courage, about sacrifice. Those are the stories that stick with us.
It's like his story, it became this symbol, this rallying cry for the early Christian movement. But it's more than just a story about faith, isn't it? It's about power, too.
The power of belief, the power of resistance. It's like this blueprint almost, for anyone who felt powerless against Rome.
Totally. But it begs the question, how much of his impact was the message itself and how much was, well, the way it all went down, the drama of it all?
Right, right. It makes you think, like, would a song hit the same way if the singer hadn't lived it? Sometimes the message and the messenger, they're a package deal.
It's true. You almost wonder, did the Romans accidentally create their own worst nightmare? By making a martyr out of Lucian, did they just spread his message further?
It's that old saying, what is it? The blood of the martyrs.
Is the seed of the church, something like that.
Exactly. They tried to silence him, but they might have made him 1,000 times louder.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
About picking your battles. Sometimes pushing back just backfires.
Oh, for sure. But then there's also that power of an idea. You can't really kill an idea. You can try to bury it, but...
But the good ones, they find a way.
Exactly.
And that's what's so amazing about Odo's sermon. We're sitting here all these centuries later, still talking about this guy. History isn't just dates in a book.
It's their stories.
It's about real people making tough choices, and then, wow, how those choices echo through time.
It's connecting with them, Even though so much has changed, some things stay the same. People searching for meaning, looking for something to believe in.
And being brave enough to fight for it, which I think is what Odo's sermon on St. Lucian is really all about, wouldn't you say? It's a call to action, in a way, to look at our own lives and ask, what do I stand for?
Absolutely. It reminds us we're not just passive readers of history, we're writing it every day.
So well said. So next time you think your voice doesn't matter, remember St. Lucian. One voice can change the world. That's the power of stories like his. Thanks for diving into this with me.
My pleasure, anytime.